Welcome back. Off the Record starts right now.
On the OTR panel this week, we have Kathy Barks-Hoffman and Susan Demas, along with David Murray. Now here's the OTR rundown. The income tax cuts move. Congressman McCotter has a signature problem, and the budget continues to be a work in progress. Later on, we'll be joined by maverick Republican political consultant John Yob. All this and more coming up right now. Off the Record.
Getting the inside out. It's Off the Record with senior Capitol correspondent Tim Skubick and his Capitol Press Corps colleagues.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by a grant from Truscott Rossman, Michigan's only bipartisan strategic communications firm, serving statewide, national, and international clients from their offices in Lansing, Detroit, and Grand Rapids. TruscottRossman.com. By the Michigan Food and Beverage Association, in conjunction with the Michigan Business and Professional Association, working together for its members. Membership information on the web at mishbusiness.org. By Hager Fox Heating and Air Conditioning Company, providing comfort to mid-Michigan homes and businesses since 1941. Hager Fox and Bryant, for whatever it takes, on the web at hagerfox.com. And by Campaign Finance US LLC, a Michigan company bringing the public online access to local campaign finance reporting. Find your county's filings at campaignfinance.us. Campaign Finance US, creating tools for transparency for Michigan's counties.
And now this edition of Off the Record with Tim Skubick.
Thank you, Joe Donovan, and welcome to this week's edition of Off the Record. They are wrapping up the state budget and maybe going to give you some money back. Let's take a look.
Clerk, please call the roll.
On the motion to report, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Representative Walsh,
Yes.
Republicans voted yes on the two tax relief plans. Some Democrats voted yes as well, but some did not vote at all. But the Democrats are complaining that the tax relief amounts to 5 cents a day.
A nickel a day will get you a couple of minutes on a parking meter. A nickel a day will buy you 2 ounces of gas if gas is at $3.60 a gallon.
But the Republican chair of the Taxation Committee counters that.
Well, it's the people's money that we're letting them keep. You know, I certainly, there's the argument that it's not a lot of money, but I would argue that the more we let people keep, the better off people will be.
Democrats complained that the sponsors had no proof that the $90 million tax breaks would create jobs. How many jobs will this create?
$90 million, you do the math, I'm not exactly sure, but $90 million is $90 million that the taxpayers didn't have before.
The Democrats claim they want to spread the wealth around with tax cut aimed at those who truly need it. But the governor's Treasury Department says the needy are already covered in this package.
You have the increase in the personal exemption, which makes the tax change less regressive, because now poor families won't pay any tax at all.
Look for a vote on the tax cuts this week.
Let me just clarify one point. If you make under $14,000 a year, you are considered to be truly needy and don't pay the tax. Everybody over that will, right? So is this going to fly, Suze?
Fly as in pass?
Mm-hmm.
Well, sure.
Yep.
It's an election year.
Why wouldn't it?
Right. But, I mean, in reality, it's about $15 for every person for, this year. So that's not a whole lot.
They have no choice, but the Democrats have to get on board and complain at the same time.
Well, right. I mean, but it is pretty much just an election year maneuver by the House Republicans who are up for re-election this fall. It really, the Michigan League for Human Services does point out that because last year they cut the earned income tax credit, which does go to working poor families, they're going to be paying about over $200 million extra in taxes, and they're not going to see very much of this at all. So, it is true that, and actually all families are going to be paying more next year because of the changes they made last year in the income tax. So it really is not going to be very much of a sop at all when people start to do their taxes next year.
It won't. I mean, when the full tax increases that they passed last year kick in for 2012, which we'll all be paying next year, April 15th, I mean, the scenarios that the House Fiscal Agency has run is that people will get hit by about $150 to over $3,000. So 15 bucks doesn't really add up to that.
Well, individuals, like you said, are going to be paying $1.4 billion in additional income taxes, and they want to give a $90 million tax break. You can do the math.
Dave, there's a disagreement here. The Republicans want to give something to everybody, even though it may be chump change, and the Democrats say let's target it at the people that need it, and obviously the D's are losing.
Right. well, they have to say they, as the party of tax cuts and lower taxes, they have to make a statement of some kind. The people who are the most needy have other programs that they're trying to help them with.
The line that I loved is Ms. Hughes said it's a $1,000 tax break. That's a bit of a stretch, okay? First of all, nobody's going to get a check from the state at all.
She wouldn't mind if people think that they will, though.
Well, that's exactly why she uses the term, to counterbalance the $20 versus $1,000. What it is, you take the $1,000 off your income tax, then depending on your tax rate, which everybody pays, you get what is about 15 bucks?
Yeah.
So it's not 1,000.
Well, and it's very interesting because the Republicans are known as the tax cut party, but for individual taxpayers, they raised taxes quite a bit last year. It's just that was offset by cutting business taxes. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the side of the story that obviously nobody wants to talk about this election season.
It does help to add it in the increase the personal exemption, so that does help people farther down.
$250 per person in the family. So if you got 4 kids, it's $1,000. Thaddeus McCarter had a bad week.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
What went wrong?
Well, that's got to be a staff problem. Of course, when you can't collect enough signatures, and when they have issues with the petitions that they've collected, certainly the candidates probably haven't touched a real petition, especially one with the service that McCarter's has.
Especially when you're in South Korea.
Well, that too. But clearly, I mean, that's a staff problem. But that shouldn't happen. Someone's got to be responsible for those kinds of things, and to not be on the ballot because your staff didn't send out the petitions and get them collected and brought back, that's a problem.
We have 435 members of Congress. I haven't heard about this happening with any of the others, and in my career, I have never heard of this happening.
Well, is it a problem or is it fraud?
Well, that's what the Attorney General is now investigating because it appears that there was some cutting and pasting going on. There's now questions being raised about whether signatures from previous year's petitions were tried to put in.
That's the one I like.
And it was such a sloppy job that the lines don't line up anymore. Things have been chopped off, some of the wording, and you wonder who was paying attention that suddenly realized that they had fewer than 250 valid petition signatures, and that oops, the deadline's here. Because obviously somebody
was scrambling at the last
somebody
minute.
was scrambling, and like you said, this is not probably going to affect Thaddeus McCarter. Nobody's saying that he conducted any fraud. He has not mentioned any staff members that might have been involved, although the Democratic Party went through the petition signatures and said, well, 5 of these were Thaddeus McCarter's staff members. The others were, some of them were a couple of elected officials, others were Republican activists. So it's going to come down to who was actually responsible. Of course, Mr. McCarter now has the problem that he has to run as a write-in candidate. So his punishment might be that he ends up throwing away a really good job.
Well, he has said all the right things. I'm calling on the Attorney General. I'm pleased that they're looking. What else is he going to say? But this obviously does not look good. And a writing campaign, even with a popular name, is a tough road to hoe.
It's a lot of extra work that he shouldn't have to be doing. Mm-hmm. And what's amazing is that 1,000 signatures is not a lot. You could pass that around a pretty big party meeting.
Take it into a bar on a Friday night, okay? Yeah.
Well, this is a new district for him, so it's not just people in his district who he has run with before who know his name. He's got a lot of his district in a part where he's not run before. And let's face it, most people can't name their current congressman, let alone some guy who's next, hasn't been their congressman. So I think, right. And there is a Republican on the ballot. He's a teacher and not somebody who's been in elected office before, but it's very easy to check the name on the ballot on the Republican side.
Yeah, McCarter has to get more signatures than him for a write-in, for him to appear on the ballot in November, and that's going to be a challenge.
The people that may be in trouble are the circulators, the ones that take the petitions around. They are the ones that have to swear that everything is on the up and up. McCarter only turned in a piece of paper to the Secretary of State swearing to the fact that names were turned in. So he's basically off the hook here, although it's still his responsibility.
Well, although it's, if it's a situation where somebody took some of the signatures that were turned in and then doctored the documents, well, that may not be the fault of the petition circulators either. Mm-hmm. That could be somebody else.
Yeah. Well, this is a mess.
Well, the bottom line, of course, is that it's McCarter's campaign. It's McCarter's responsibility. He can't hide behind, well, my staff made some mistakes. Oops.
Yeah.
That buck does stop with him. It's his name.
Let's not forget this guy ran for president.
Oh, he did, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah, I think that may have been part of his problem.
Perhaps he was a little
off
distracted.
message.
Yeah.
He may have a fallback, you know, as a guitar player. He's a very good guitar player.
I
He's
think
in a
his
band,
licks got very good the longer that campaign went on. The campaign didn't do too well.
That's true.
K through 12 budget. Schools now know how much money they're getting. How much are they getting, Dave?
Well, they're going to get, depending on if they're a low-funded district or a high-funded district, they're going to, at the ones at the low end are going to get another $120 per student to their base grant. But then it could get a little more too. The ones who meet 7 of 8 best practices as defined by the governor will get a little more. They'll get something to help them with their pension and health care costs. That's separate from the foundation grant. Some of the districts in the middle of the funding scale and the top are not too pleased because they don't get, the only thing they would get were some of the best practices money and the pension money. But they would like a little more. They say our expenses are growing too, not just for the folks at the bottom. Our heating goes up, our bills go up. We need some help too.
Well, the Democrats pointed out that the schools took a $450 hit per pupil a couple of years ago, and now some of them get $120 back. Do the math, they're still behind the 8 ball.
Right. I mean, that's the argument from the Dems. There were a lot of numbers thrown out as to what the cut was last year, but nobody disputes there was clearly a cut. And we didn't make up for it this year. There was also an issue over kindergarten money, which districts like Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo and Lansing really needed. And it's still questionable how that's all going to work out, and if perhaps the feds will say that that money can't be used, and then they'll be out millions more.
448 schools get a little more, the rest don't. Is that equitable?
Well, I think the issue is that it's not equitable now. You know, you have school districts that are getting a little less than $7,000 per pupil, and you have some school districts that are getting thousands of dollars per pupil more, and despite Prop A passing in 1994, we've never closed that gap. So I think the Republicans, have been trying to, give $2, more per pupil to the lower districts and $1 more. This time they're like, well, we don't have enough money to do that $1 more for the higher ones. But they are trying to close the gap. But the issue still is, if you look purely at the per pupil funding, that the lower districts are getting 5% less than what they were getting before they took the big cut this year. The higher districts are going to be even farther behind because they're getting they got the big cut last year and got nothing more this year. There is ways, like you said, for them to make up some of the money per pupil, but by following best practices, by privatizing some of their services or consolidating services, things like that. But they put less money into that pot this year than they did last year. Last year they could make up to $100 per pupil on that. This year it's not going to be as much.
Overall, the budget's in pretty good shape as far as the R is concerned. The House, as we leave here today, will pass part of their stuff today to meet the June 1st deadline. Settle to do it next week. Anything jump out at you in the rest of the budget that was controversial?
Well, we're not going to have a private prison, which was something that the Democrats and unions were really pushing against.
The Republicans were really banging that one pretty hard, weren't they?
They were.
Some Republicans.
Well, that's true.
But the governor was not on board.
No, and there was some questions about the company they wanted to use because there were a lot of lawsuits, although the Department of Corrections also has its fair share of lawsuits, as we should note. But that discussion is going to continue. We've got a $2 billion budget. They're going to try and cut costs where they can.
Well, the Republicans have an argument. Look at the Senator Pro says, we want competitive bidding on prison services. Nothing wrong with that, okay? It's the privatization piece which is a little problematic that the Ds and the unions have problems with.
Well, not only that, the administration itself, which is, a Republican governor, says, look, we're cutting costs. We don't need to close down one of our prisons, and as lawmakers from that district are saying, why are you laying off guys in my district or people in my district so that you can open, give jobs to a private prison? And quite frankly, Geo Group owns this prison up in Baldwin. They bought the company that was running it when it was a juvenile prison when the state used it. The state ended up finding out that they were spending more money there than they would be keeping the people in their own prisons, so they moved the kids out, and the prison's been empty since. They hoped to get prisoners from California, but then California ran into fiscal problems and couldn't pay that either. So the prison is empty, and obviously, you know, we have lawmakers who say just having some competitive bidding will drive down costs even for the state system. And so there's a philosophical argument here too.
There's an interesting wrinkle in this. Some outstate Republicans actually sided with the unions and the Democrats in this. You know, all politics is local, and that's what blocked this thing in the House. They just couldn't break it loose because there were a handful, 5, 6, maybe 7 Republicans who were siding. I had the prison guide, the corrections officer union guy tell me, we got a nice little block of Republican votes, so we can sit on this thing.
Well, that's the thing. If they if they close Ionia, who knows? They might next come after the prison in your district.
Exactly.
So I think that you are going to have some Republicans who say, well, why should I move that direction? This is a big, you know, there's a lot of people working for prisons in the state of Michigan.
Let's call in John Yob. Mr. Yob, please.
John Yob and his dad Chuck founded the national political consulting firm Strategic National in the late 1990s. The firm has helped to run the John McCain for President effort in 2008, worked with Rick Santorum this last cycle, and helped to elect Governor Rick Snyder and Attorney General Bill Schuette. The Yob mission statement is to, quote, go against the political establishment. Mr. Yob attended the U of M.
Mr. Yob, welcome back to the show. Suze has got the first question.
What I was curious about is, you know, most of the campaigns you've been involved in have had this theme that your candidate is more conservative than everybody else, is the true conservative. But the last campaign you were working on was with Dave Agema, who has actually gone after another one of your clients, Rick Snyder, for not being conservative enough, didn't sign that bill for the ban of domestic partner or gay benefits. So do you feel like you compromised your conservative principles at all by working for the governor?
What I would say to that is that I'm not sure which campaigns you're referring to where the candidate positioned themselves as the most conservative, or that
like Dave Agema against Saul Newsis?
I'll get to that in a second. So I'm not sure exactly which campaigns, other than that one that you're talking about. You said most of the campaigns that I've been involved in. If there's a common thread between the campaigns I've been involved in, they've been anti-establishment campaigns. In my view, in today's politics, there are two spectrums. Within the Republican Party, there's the moderate to conservative spectrum, but there's also the establishment versus anti-establishment spectrum. If you go back to my first campaign in 1998 for John Smetanka, he was clearly the anti-establishment candidate. If you go to my second group of campaigns, which have been Terry Land versus Lauren Bennett, or Mike Cox versus Dan DeGrow, they were anti-establishment candidates. In 2008, even John McCain was the anti-establishment candidate at first anyway. In 2010, Rick Snyder was an anti-establishment candidate, and in 2012, I'm doing some anti-establishment campaigns as well. So the common thread is more based on the establishment versus anti-establishment spectrum than it is based on a moderate versus conservative
What is it in your DNA that makes you not like the establishment?
Well, it's interesting. You know, my first campaign was the Smetanka-Romney campaign.
This was taking on John Engler.
It was, and
you beat him.
We did. The bad news for me is that we beat him.
Yeah, that cost you, didn't it?
I don't know about that, but
well, why did you say that?
I was joking. It certainly, in some people's minds, I'm sure it did. But you know, we've made a pretty good career out of taking on the establishment, so we're pretty comfortable with that.
McCain was the establishment in 2008, and Pete Hoekstra, he's really anti-establishment this year.
I don't accept the premise that McCain was the establishment in 2008. When McCain when McCain first started out his campaign, he certainly co-opted a lot of the Bush people, and maybe in some ways became the establishment front-running candidate. In July of 2007, when the campaign broke down famously, I think at that point probably Romney became the front-runner, and McCain probably.
But you didn't answer the question. Why is it that you don't like the establishment?
I'm very comfortable from an anti-establishment perspective. I do believe in new blood. When I first got started in politics, it was very much a different party than it is today. It was a party that was top-down. It was a party where the leaders at the top made the decisions, and then the grassroots and consultants, et cetera, were supposed to implement those decisions.
And you don't like that?
No, I'm very much for a grassroots party, for a bottom-up party, for a party that is made up of many, many individuals rather than just a top-down style leadership.
You're working on Pete Hoekstra's congressional campaign. You know, should he have come up with a different answer when he was asked the question about, you know, President Obama's birth certificate, or was, you know, coming up with a new federal office to check into birth certificates, you know, a good policy decision?
I'm not here as a representative of the Hoekstra campaign today. I'm not a spokesperson for the campaign, so I'm not going to delve too much into the strategy, et cetera. What I will say about that is it was one of about 30 questions that were asked at a town hall forum, so this isn't like a policy proposal that he put out. He was asked a question about what could be done to prevent this controversy from happening again. He's a guy who's offered solutions, whether it was with the Teamsters or whether it was with the House Budget Committee and passing budgets, or whether it was with the Intelligence Committee, and so he proposed a solution on the spot, sort of off the cuff.
John, the discontent that swept the Republicans into power in 2010, does that exist as much today? Do Republicans have a more difficult challenge trying to hold on to the State House?
You know, presidential election years are often more difficult for Republicans than gubernatorial election years, so if history is a trend, it would theoretically be more difficult. I still do believe that the passion is on the side of the Republican Party. The Tea Party is a dominant force within the party. It is strong. Some people view that negatively, some people view that positively. I view that very positively. It provides us with the ground troops, it provides us with the passion and energy that showed up at the polls in 2010, I believe will show up at the polls
Does the party need a new Republican chair?
Obviously, I've been fairly vocal on that issue. I don't think it would be prudent for Bobby Shostak to step down or be replaced in the middle of his term. However, long term, I think that probably be better for a candidate who is more in touch with the grassroots base of the party.
Like who?
I don't have anybody in particular in mind.
Haven't started on that one yet.
I would say it wouldn't be prudent to begin on that until November. I do think that if Bobby steps up and does what he's good at, fundraising, they were very successful in 2010 in fundraising, he and Ambassador Weiser, and if he does that between now and then I think he'll have done his job.
Who's running the party? Is the Tea Party running the state Republican Party?
Well, the state Republican Party is not monolithic, so the building over downtown here is obviously run by Bobby Shostak.
That's one building.
In terms of the grassroots base of the party, the Tea Party is now obviously the dominant force. It used to be that the party at the grassroots level was run by county chairs and district chairs and national committee members, et cetera. These days, the Tea Party base of the party is very, very strong internally.
The dominant force?
At the grassroots level, absolutely.
Is that a bit of a, I mean, it's a strength in one way. Like you said, these people do show up, they pound on doors, they show up at rallies, they're very involved. But, you have some divisiveness within the party, obviously, and, is that just going to grow? I mean, is that a weakness that the party is, we're having fights over who the national committee people should be, things like this?
Well, I don't think that's a weakness. I think it's a strength in some ways. Obviously, it does create some difficulties, as you're referring to. But I would rather have the energy on our side than have people not want to show up at conventions and not care about our elections, which has been the case in various years in the past. And so I think that the energy that's being displayed at the grassroots level showed itself in 2010, helped us win a lot of elections, and is likely to be an asset for us this cycle.
Is Governor Snyder the same guy that ran for governor?
Absolutely. Governor Snyder ran as a guy with a positive vision, who ran on a platform of being post-partisan, nonpartisan, of doing what's best for the people of Michigan. I think on this show, you and others may have accused him of being naive a couple years ago in that regard. I think now, maybe on your show even today, you acknowledge that he believes this and he's doing it. And so he is absolutely the same governor that he ran as, and he's doing a
Well, he's not
job.
a favorite of the Tea Party, is he?
They certainly have some differences on issues such as the bridge, of course.
Well, that would be an understatement, wouldn't it?
Well, I'm not sure. They have some differences on issues such as the bridge.
Well, they rolled them in the convention.
But he cut taxes dramatically.
He also raised taxes.
He cut taxes dramatically. He cut regulations. He's cut unemployment.
Mr. Yob, he also raised taxes.
There are obviously some things that the Tea Party didn't necessarily agree with, but the governor does what he thinks is right for the people of Michigan.
And so Tea Party, that's the way it is.
As I said, the Tea Party is a dominant force in the grassroots base of the party, but they don't necessarily run the party. And so the governor is doing what he thinks is best for the people of Michigan, and he's having fantastic results. He's cut unemployment in half.
Do you think that the Tea Party and others who are more conservative in the party, I mean, can they pull the party too far to the right so it's, you start losing independents and others who might needed to be, winning elections?
We've been a conservative party for a long time, since since the Robertson folks and Christian Coalition folks came to the party in 1988. So it's not new that we have a conservative grassroots base in the party.
You are advising Hoekstra, though, so I think it's fair to ask you about that. And you've worked with Fred Davis, who helped put together that controversial China ad that some people said was racist. Was that a mistake? Should you have gone a different way?
As I said, I'm not here as a representative of Pete Hoekstra today, so I'm not going to get into internal campaign strategies 8 weeks before the primary. I don't think that'd be fair to him, or would it be appropriate.
Was the ad
why
appropriate?
wouldn't it be fair to ask you if you were advising the campaign?
It's perfectly fair to ask me. It's also perfectly fair for me to say that we're not going to display the playbook
Is
8
that
weeks
because
before the
they don't even
primary.
You don't have to do the playbook.
Hang on, John, is this because you don't even have a campaign manager, so you don't even have anybody answering for the Hoekstra campaign right now?
We have a spokesperson who answers for the campaign, and
Sometimes.
and we are running the campaign.
Was the ad effective?
I'm not going to get into this.
Well, that's an easy one, isn't it? Did it work or didn't it?
The ad had some positive and negative aspects to it.
Which outweighed the most?
It had some positive and negative aspects to it. The positive aspects were that in the month of March and in April, our mail receipts went up tremendously. We took an issue.
Fundraising took a dive.
That's not accurate.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
We took a look at MERS. Debbie Stabenow raised a lot off of it.
If I can respond, in the month of February, fundraising was not particularly strong because we were dealing with the ad. In the month of March, which Kyle's analysis went up to February 28th, if you look at the month of March and go back and look at that, small dollar fundraising.
So what was the
actually
negative
very
side?
strong.
What was the negative side of the ad?
I mean, obviously, the Democrats were able to make it into an issue, and supposedly Senator Stabenow was able to raise some money off of it. I don't know whether that's accurate or not.
But you say that you raised money off of it in March?
I did not say that I raised money off in March. What I said was that fundraising in March did increase.
Mr. Yob, will Romney win Michigan?
Mitt Romney has an excellent chance to win Michigan. The polling for both Pete Hoekstra and Mitt Romney are very similar.
But you don't think he'll win?
I think he has a very good chance to win.
Okay, good to see you again. Also a thanks, say hi to your dad. Also a thanks to Dave and Kathy and Suze. Don't forget our email address and our Facebook. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, and at WKAR.org. See you next week.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by a grant from Truscott Rossman, Michigan's only bipartisan strategic communications firm, serving statewide, national, and international clients from their offices in Lansing, Detroit, and Grand Rapids. TruscottRossman.com. By the Michigan Food and Beverage Association, in conjunction with the Michigan Business and Professional Association, working together for its members. Membership information on the web at mishbusiness.org. By Hager Fox Heating and Air Conditioning Company, providing comfort to mid-Michigan homes and businesses since 1941. Hager, Fox & Bryant, for whatever it takes, on the web at hagerfox.com. And by Campaign Finance US LLC, a Michigan company bringing the public online access to local campaign finance reporting. Find your county's filings at campaignfinance.us. Campaign Finance US, creating tools for transparency for Michigan's counties. MLive Media Group, providing real-time Michigan news, sports, business, and entertainment at mlive.com. Tim Skubick blogs about Michigan politics daily at mlive.com. Off the Record can be seen online anytime at video.wkar.org. Episodes on DVD are also available for purchase.
Michigan public TV stations have contributed to the production costs of Off the Record with Tim Skubick.